Okay, welcome everybody to today's lecture. International risk analysis is what we're going to be talking about today, and that will be covering topics of concerning risk and uncertainty and how to consider rates of return for a particular level of risk. And then we'll get on to new technology, the risk involved in new technology, what that means for developing the new technologies, whether it's being pulled along by the market or whether a new technology is pushing its way into the market and creating a new market for itself. And finally, we'll talk briefly about paradigms. I won't do this now, or at least I won't do it as a class task, but I'll talk you through it, because what often happens with risk is that people don't calculate it correctly, or rather consumers calculate risk in a very human and psychological way, which is not the same thing as the way businesses calculate risk or the way you would mathematically calculate a risk. So I've got three options here. £10, British currency. So you've got £10 and you can put it into a bank account for a year and it earns 5% interest. So in a year's time, you will have £10, 50 pence, I do believe. Alternatively, you can bet that £10 on the toss of a coin, heads or tails. If you win heads, then you get £20. If you lose the £10. You lose everything. If you invest £10 in a company providing earthquake insurance in London, then it's likely that the return on the investment is about 10%. But it does rather depend on whether there are any earthquakes in London. If there are no earthquakes, then I suppose you get your 10%. But we have earthquakes in this country fairly frequently, but they're very, very small. In my life, I don't think I've ever felt an earthquake in this country. When they happen, someone's garden shed will collapse, a wall will fall over, but we don't have earthquakes that knock whole buildings down. So they are very rare. But if there was to be an earthquake, then it would wipe out your £10 investment. You would have nothing left. So the question I would put to a class is which is the best of the three schemes? Which one would you invest in? Well, the safest one, of course, is the first one, putting money into a bank account. Probably the next safest one would be the earthquake company, and the riskiest one would be the middle one, where you're betting on the toss of a coin. The important thing to realise, though, is that because the first one is so safe, you get a very low rate of return. With the last one, it's not quite as safe, but it's not totally risky. As a consequence, the rate of return is double, 10%, but the risk, or I don't know, the risk is at least double. And then the final one, that's the one with the best rate of return. It's 100% rate of return. It is the riskiest one there by a long way, but the rate of return compensates you for that. In fact, that second one compensates you so handsomely that it's by far the best investment. Yes, it's the riskiest, but it also has the highest rate of return. This is the point about business. Business is never risk averse. Business people are never risk takers. Yeah, it's all about calculating what the risk is, figuring out the rate of return that you're likely to get, and making sure the rate of return covers the risk. And if it does cover the risk, then go ahead with the investment. Yeah? And this is a rational calculation that anyone can make. It doesn't have to be a big, tough, blonde-haired, white guy who went to Harvard University who's got the courage to take the big risks. You know, anyone can take this risk. Women, old people, young people, any race, any ethnicity, yeah, is about mastering the science of business, and risk, uncertainty, and rates of return. Those are all calculations that which define the scientific part of business. Now, as an entrepreneur, you would specialize in having insights, special insights that allow you to calculate for a lower risk. So we've been looking at this with this assignment and the core value concept, and often the founder is the one, as I say, who understands their business best. As a consequence, they understand the risk best. So someone like Steve Jobs running Apple, he had a gut feeling for the way the market works and what demand was like in the market. And he believed that there was a lot of demand for a premium product that was beautifully styled and had its own unique way of working, and that people would pay extra for that, and that they would buy into the whole brand image, the family of Apple products. Yeah. So what that meant was that for him, in his risk calculation, he saw this as a low risk venture, starting a company that would make these premium, exciting products that would represent a new lifestyle for people. And we looked at that photograph the other week, and it helps you to understand why Apple is a very sort of Californian type of company, why it's all about style. It's about appearing to be technically advanced, actually no more technically advanced than any of the rivals. But Steve Jobs understood his market so well that for him, the investment in Apple was actually fairly low risk. As a consequence, he would accept a lower rate of return. Anyone else starting a new company, or anyone else looking at Apple right at the start, would say, no, that's a high risk venture and the return is not nearly high enough. As a consequence, not many people put money into Apple right at the beginning. A few people did, and those people are now very, very rich. Okay, consumer attitude to risk, rather. They will appear to be irrational. So, for example, if you offer someone pounds, I like to keep things in pounds. So if people are assured a return on their investment of £400, they would choose that over a return of £500, which has an element of gambling in it or an element of chance in it, because they think that £500 return on the investment that's got more chance involved is somehow riskier, and therefore they're more likely to lose. This is not actually true. Well, not necessarily, and it may well be that extra element of chance is more than compensated for by the extra return on investment, in which case it's a better investment opportunity. But that's not the way people's minds work. It's often said, therefore, that people are irrational. But there is a system going on. People are not mad. If they are irrational, then you can't say anything about their behavior anymore. It means they're buying things at random if they're irrational, and that's simply not true. A couple of theories here: expected utility and prospect theory, trying to explain why people change the way that they accept risk. Expected utility says that the first money you earn, it may be the most valuable, and that's the most attractive. That's the one you want to hold on to. Subsequent money you get after that, you're prepared to take a risk on. Okay, prospect theory takes a more negative approach and says that loss itself has a value, and people are trying to avoid that. So they will take the safer bet, not because they prefer the safer bet, but because more than that, they would hate to lose. Yeah? Okay, so people will take this asymmetric judgment of risk. They will tend to lean towards the safe option rather than taking a riskier option, which in fact pays off better. An example of this would be car insurance. In this country, we have different levels of car insurance. Comprehensive, where if anything happens, everything is paid for by the insurance company. The next level down, the insurance company will pay for any damage done to someone else, but they won't pay for the damage to your car, or they'll only pay a small amount. They will only pay if the car is stolen or catches fire. And then there's a basic level of insurance which doesn't cover your car at all, but it only covers other people. So if you're in an accident and your car is wrecked and their car is wrecked, their car will be fixed. Your car, hard luck, you just have to throw it away and buy another car with your own money. Well, I've always had comprehensive insurance, right? So whatever happens, my car's paid for, their car's paid for, everything's paid for from the insurance. Obviously, the most expensive insurance. I was paying, and I've always paid, rather a lot of money for my cars because they tend to be rather big cars. But I would be paying £500 on a car. Because it's an old car, it's not worth much money. It might actually only be worth £400. So what am I doing paying £500 insurance on a car that's only worth £400 itself? Now, I can sort of try and defend this, but the truth is I cannot be bothered to do the calculation. I don't know if I can trust the calculation. I might have missed something. So what I'm worried about is that if I get it wrong and I buy really basic insurance, if there's an accident, there might be something I've missed and I end up paying thousands of pounds to fix a problem that comprehensive insurance would have paid for. So the comprehensive insurance, it may be more expensive than the car, and it is, of course, more expensive than the other forms of insurance, the cheaper ones, but it's not that much more. What am I doing then? I'm probably just trying to get what we call peace of mind. In other words, if I went for the cheapest insurance, I would worry about it. That would cause me psychological stress. So I'm paying to get away from that psychological stress. And that might be what prospect theory is about. So let's have a look at these irrational consumers. Why are they behaving in this way? We like to think, economists like to think that consumers are rational. If they're not rational, as I said, none of the theories work. If customers are truly irrational, then they are mad and they're doing things at random. Well, they're not completely mad, obviously, but behavioral economists think that there may be two different ways in which consumers are behaving. So one is that they're responding automatically. So something comes up, an opportunity to buy something, or they need to get insurance, or they need to do something. They'll make a very rapid decision because that's what's required. And that rapid decision will be based on their intuition. So they basically have a bit of a guess, or it's their gut reaction, their instinct, it's their habit, they do it according to custom, they do it according to what other people do. So, if that's what they've always done in their family, what might be an example of this? Well, I don't know, insurance. If you're hiring a car and the insurance company say, right, do you want to have insurance on you hiring this car? You've only got a couple of minutes. You want to be in that car and driving off somewhere. So you go, oh, well, it seems like the safest thing to do. I've heard about insurance. I'd hate to have to pay thousands of pounds out in costs. Yes, I'll have the insurance. you don't think about it at all. You don't consider it. You don't consider to yourself, hang on a minute, I've already got insurance. Maybe that insurance covers this. That is what you would do in the reflective part. So maybe if you hire a car a week in advance, it gives you a week to think about it. They've asked you, do you want insurance? You check with your insurance company and you find out that actually you have insurance already for hire cars. So you can make this slower, more conscious, more calculating decision. That's either automatic or reflective. And the thing about the automatic side is you can make you make what appear to be irrational decisions based on heuristics. Heuristics is learning by experience. What do they call it? Learning from your mistakes. A rule of thumb, so you've got a general rule that if ever anyone offers you insurance, you go for it. What they do in this country, I don't know about China, but if you buy something really cheap, like a toaster or a kettle, at the checkout they'll say, do you want an extended warranty? And you can find yourself standing there thinking, okay, I'm buying a toaster for £20. They're offering me an extended warranty for £25. Shall I go for it? I don't know. Oh, yes, I'll go for it, because that's what you always do. And it's only afterwards you think the warranty is more expensive than the toaster itself. I might as well, if the toaster breaks after a couple of years, throw it away and buy another toaster for £20. If you would have had time. And companies will prey on this. They will exploit the fact that when we are backed into a corner, we have to make a rapid decision. And that irrationality can be based on herd instinct. You're following what everyone else is doing. Habit, this is what you always do. Poor computation ability, you're just not up to figuring out what the risk is. Anchoring is when you set a standard for yourself and you're unwilling to move away from that standard. It's a standard that generally speaking works. So you always get the extended warranty. It's a television costing $2,000, you get the extended warranty. You buy a computer for $1,000, you get the extended warranty. It's the safe thing to do. Occasionally it's not. You're buying a toaster and you get a warranty, a guarantee that's far too expensive, but generally speaking, anchoring works. And status quo, you just prefer to leave things the way they are. You don't have to think about change then. Now it's because of this, because of these behaviours, this reluctance to change, because change involves an awful lot of thought and it involves putting yourself at risk. People will end up doing the wrong thing. So nudge theory is a theory that came up at least 10 years ago, but it's still seen as the sort of the new theory in business. And it's based on an idea of liberal paternalism. Paternalism, from the word for father, pater, it means acting like someone's father and telling them what the right thing is to do. Liberal meaning they still have the choice. So it's kind of, nudge theory involves pointing out to people what the right thing is to do and then giving them the right circumstances so they can easily make the right choice. And the example they often give, the authors of this theory, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, is of pensions. Now, in America, you have to set up your old age pension yourself. It's optional. So when you join a company, they will provide you with that opportunity. What they found was that the companies, when they're recruiting people, they will give them a free option and they will say, do you want to have a pension? If you do, then we will take the money out of your salary every month to pay into the pension. And with a choice like that, 80% of people would turn down the opportunity and 20% only would take it up. This is a problem because people must have a pension. You can't retire and find you've got no money. So you've got to pay into a pension, really, and it's disastrous that this should be happening. What nudge theory suggested was that you do it the other way round, and you put people into the pension, but you give them the option, if they want, of opting out. So you have to make that move. You have to say, no, I don't want the pension. Perhaps because you're already rich, perhaps because you've only been given 6 months to live and you're not going to be retiring, whatever the reason is. And what they found was that then 80% of people would keep with the pension, and only 20% would decide to turn it down. So this is an example of nudge theory doing the right thing, or helping people to do the right thing. What are other examples of nudge theory? In supermarkets in this country, what they used to do next to the cash registers is have displays of chocolate. Chocolate, of course, is not very good for you. But people would be standing there waiting to be served. They'd see all this chocolate and they'd buy it. Yeah, they didn't go to the supermarket to buy it, but now that they've seen it and they're looking at it, they buy it. Nudge theory tries to get people to do the right thing. Right thing is not to buy the chocolate. You can buy chocolate when you want to buy it. That's the right thing. But buying sweets, buying candy, when you don't really want it, is just bad for your health. And psychologically, you're not gaining. So what nudge theory said was, move the chocolate display to somewhere else in the supermarket. Next to the cash register, just have healthy food. That encourages people to buy healthy food. And if they want chocolate, and there's no reason why they shouldn't have it, if they really want it, they want to treat themselves, then they need to go and look for it in the usual way. Okay. So what about the difference between risk and uncertainty? This goes right back to 1921, so 101 years ago. Knight came up with this theory at, I think that's the Chicago Business School or the Chicago School of Economics. And what he defined risk as was a probability that you can identify and you can calculate. So if you're playing a game of poker, you can figure out the odds of you winning. Whether you take that risk or not is entirely down to you. It's got nothing to do with the calculation of the risk. Yeah, I mean, you can't say the risk is too high. It's just that whether the risk is too high for you. Uncertainty then is where the probability cannot be calculated in a meaningful way. Going back to that very first example on the first slide where we were talking about earthquakes. Earthquakes in London do happen. They're tiny. The chances of a big earthquake is probably once a century. And even then, it won't be as big as you have in China. Well, if you're investing in an earthquake insurance company and the next earthquake is not for another 100 or 200 years, well, that's way, way beyond the time horizon for your investment. It's longer than you're going to live, for goodness sakes. So although you can make this sort of calculation on the risk, it doesn't mean anything to you. But that's an uncertainty. What does this mean for business then? Well, risk is an objective judgment, as I've said before, is based on your own intellectual and rational abilities. So it's down to your research, your insights. It's got absolutely nothing to do with your courage, with your ethnicity, with your age, your gender. Yeah, it's an objective judgment, and you can make the calculation. An uncertainty then is one where you can't make that meaningful calculation. Entrepreneurs, they will attempt to do this. So entrepreneurs will take something which looks uncertain or it looks like it's an extremely high risk with a low rate of return. And they will use their insights, their instincts, their gut feeling to be able to calculate a much lower risk level. I'm not saying that what they're doing is any different. It's still the same investment opportunity, but they have a different view of it. And they believe that the risk is much lower. And it's because they've got some particular insight into the market or into the product. And because they believe the risk is much lower, they will then accept a much lower rate of return. So, if you were designing, let's see how Apple got started. If you were designing a computer which has its own operating system, and it's a very stylish looking machine, and it's marketed well, then you might decide, because you're Steve Jobs, you might decide that it's actually a reasonably low risk investment with a medium rate of return. But that medium rate of return is much better than the risk. So you're going to do very well out of it financially. Whereas other people might say, no. This is a high risk venture with a medium rate of return, but that's not good enough. If it's going to be high risk, it's got to have a high rate of return. It's no good having a high risk venture with a medium rate of return. Okay, so that's how an entrepreneur would convert an uncertainty into a calculable risk. There are different ways of looking at the risk. One way is to divide it up into 4 levels. Level 1 is where you're just looking at past performance and assuming it's going to carry on as before. So, tomorrow during the World Cup, I don't know if the World Cup is tomorrow, but during the World Cup tomorrow, pizza sales will go up as people sit down in front of the TV and they order in pizzas. Right? Discrete binary futures is where it can go one way or the other. So elections in a country like this are like that. Is either it goes to the Tories or it goes to the Labour Party. In America, they're at the moment choosing between the Republicans and the Democrats. It'll go one way or it'll go the other way. Multiple futures. So there's some kind of new technology and there's a variety of possible outcomes. So with 3D technology that came in for films, well, it's actually been around a long time, but they seem to improve the technology about, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and there was a lot of excitement about it. And there was a belief then that TVs would also need to have 3D technology. Actually, it hasn't taken off at all. It could have been that it would have been popular, reasonably popular in cinemas, but not popular on TV. It could have been that it would have been popular in both. It turns out it was popular in neither. But the technology is still there, and the technology was never going to offer anything incredible. It was never going to offer anything unimaginable. So it was never going to change the way we live, for example, or where we live. It was only going to change slightly the way that we engage with our screen time. Level 4, though, is that true ambiguity. You really don't know where the technology is going to go. And it could be that it just helps people within their daily lives, or it could change those lives fundamentally. Right, so let's have a look at, that's just a graphical illustration of the different types of risk. Let's have a look at some products. So starting at the top left, Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, if you don't know about this is a whole new use for the internet, where instead of human beings interacting between, well, basically two machines. So, you buy something online, you have to go onto the website, you order it from the company. They have a highly automated warehouse that can process your order and send it out, but they send it to you and then you do with it whatever you wanted. So perhaps you order some milk and you're ordering it from this incredibly automated company via their website, and you're putting it into your fridge, but you're the one doing the ordering, you're the one putting it into your fridge. Yeah? The Internet of Things connects the fridge to the retailer. So it's your fridge that actually orders the milk. You're never involved. All you know is that one day you come home and there's some milk waiting for you to put in the fridge. It could also be business to business. So supermarkets, for example, the shelf would be able to detect how much milk it has, and if it's getting low, it would then order new milk from the supplier. And the company, no one at the company needs to be doing the ordering. You might be driving down the road and your car suddenly tells you to go to the nearest garage. You don't know why. You just go to the nearest garage, and when you get there, that garage is ready to fit a new tyre on your car because you've got a flat tyre. You never knew. The car knew, and it informed the garage, the tyre supplier, and made all the arrangements for you. So that's the Internet of Things. Top right picture there, smartphones in general, so the business of smartphones. Bottom left, we've got the iPhone going from iPhone 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I think we're up to 14 now. And then bottom right is a thing called the BlackBerry. And the BlackBerry was the premium smartphone for quite a few years because it offered security. So top managers who don't want their phones to be hacked, they would have a BlackBerry. Intelligence services, the government, armed forces, they would all use BlackBerry because it was said to be more secure. It did get hacked. They lost that security. So BlackBerry almost disappeared. What we're looking at here is their new phone, hoping to recapture that market share. So which one's which? Now, I'll go through this for you. So let's see. The first one was the Internet of Things. Lots of possibilities there. Business to business, business to consumer. It's type 4. So it could go in any direction. For quite a long time now, you've been able to buy fridges made in South Korea that connect to the internet, and they have that Internet of Things potential. Nobody's very interested. We're more than capable of buying milk on the way home or buying it when we go shopping. Yeah. What was the next one? Smartphones in general, I would say that's a type 3. So maybe we'll use smartphones more when we get into 5G. We don't really have 5G here yet. As we get into that, we can use it for more shopping. We can perhaps watch television more on the phone. So, you know, there is a range of possibilities out there for smartphones in general. What was the other one? So the iPhone, I think it's pretty obvious that the iPhone 15 will be an improvement on the iPhone 14. So surely that's a type 1. We know more or less what the next iPhone will be like. It'll have a better screen. What else will it have? More battery life. It'll be more responsive. It'll be 5G. I can't think of anything else really. But there won't be any great revolution there. And then that final one was the new BlackBerry. Now, the new BlackBerry is either going to be accepted in the market and it'll sell reasonably well. It won't sell in huge numbers, but it will. It'll sell a few, and the company will make a reasonable amount of money and they'll be all right. Or it won't be accepted and BlackBerry will be finished. That's type 2, and BlackBerry is finished. As far as I know, there's nothing left of the company. Just trying to think what the company is actually called now. Called RMI or something. I can't remember. Anyway, I think they're I think they're either completely gone or they're just a business services company. Okay, so these new technologies, they appear in the market via two different routes. One is that it's a brand new technology. It has to push its way into the market, force acceptability on us. We weren't expecting it as a market, as consumers. We weren't looking for it, so it needs to be pushed on us. They need to make a new market. So that might be when smartphones first appeared, the touch screen. Up until then, we only used phones for texting. There was a tiny little screen, texting and making phone calls. Smartphones do so much more that actually the phone part is fairly minor. So that will be a technology push, highly risky. People think Apple invented the smartphone. They didn't. It's another manufacturer. I think it might actually be BlackBerry. They messed it up, didn't they? Market pull, on the other hand, is when you know what the demand is, so you develop the technology to meet that demand. And this is called enabling technology. So you develop the technology that enables you to meet the market demand. Technological push, but having a leading technology. You don't actually know really what it's going to do. Because the technology push is so risky, it tends to be, the research tends to be done in universities and in governments. Market pull, on the other hand, is much less risky, so it's done by companies, and they do it by enhancing the product they have now. So the model we've been looking at, the value cost model, what I've been trying to emphasize is that the new product, the new technology, the new service has to be part of a market pull. So you know what the demand already is, or you've got a good idea of demand, because you have got a very clear view of your core value concept, and you know what your value offer is. And you try and minimize the cost by basing the new technology on what you already have. Yeah. Okay, so this is about market pull then. I've explained most of this already. Market pull is, you understand what the market wants from market research. It's based on what you might call social determinism. So it's society that determines what technology it wants. And and that's why new technologies will fail, because they seem really exciting. 3D printers, I think, were a good one. This idea that overnight you can use your 3D printer to make an item that you want to buy. I say overnight because it takes so long. But if you want something, ooh, what might you want? I don't know, an ornament, for example. So you want an ornament, you've decided what it is, you set up your 3D printer, it works on it overnight, and in the morning you've got it. And you don't need to go to the shop, you don't even need to order it online, and you can do it really cheaply. But it only does it in plastic. It's severely limited on the size. So actually, it really hasn't taken off at all, because society never wanted something that would make tiny or small plastic objects over a period of 8 hours. Might as well go out and buy the thing and make sure it's manufactured by someone who really knows what they're doing and can do it fairly cheaply. Okay, so market pull tends to be based instead on corporate strategy, corporate R&D strategy, market research. You're evolving products, so you're going iPhone 14, 15, 16, 17, rather than coming up with a whole new product. Apple Watch. So the Apple Watch, not very popular, about 5% of Apple sales. It's a new product, nice idea, but no one was really, or few people were really asking for it. And in market pull, your core competitive advantage is based on some fundamental technology that you've got and that you keep on mining, if you like. So yeah, it's much lower risk, market pull is, and you've got predictable financial returns. Because the risk is lower, then the financial returns will tend to be lower, and you'll have more rivals, and those rivals will copy. They'll do more or less the same thing that you're doing. Technological push, sometimes known as blue skies research, that reveals a whole new technology, and this is technological determinism. The technology determines what the market will try to shape the market. It creates a new market. As I say, tends to be based on government-funded research, universities. It's all very exploratory. Nobody really knows where the research is going to go. But if it's successful, it can produce a revolution, a disruptive new technology. I was talking about 3D printing before, wasn't I? That could have been disrupted. If people had suddenly decided, yes, that's the future, that's what I want, I'm going to stop shopping for things and I will now make them myself overnight. Well, you don't need shops anymore. You don't even need online retail anymore. You can get rid of all of that. You don't need factories anymore because you don't need things to be made for you. You make them yourself. And if you're the company developing this new technology and it works and it's in demand, you have a core competitive advantage, at least for a few years, and you have no rivals. Extremely risky though, but the financial returns, if it works, are fantastic. You make lots of money, but you don't know. Okay, just a quick look at push versus pull then. So Kodak, the famous film producer, they actually invented the digital camera. Very much a technological push. There was no rival technology at the time. Kodak's rivals at the time were Fujifilm and Agfa, who made films. So the digital camera was creating a whole new market. Kodak couldn't take the risk. They were a highly successful film company. They didn't want to risk everything on digital cameras. I think actually they were simply risk averse. I think they probably made a mistake. They didn't make the right calculations. They should have carried on with digital cameras. Online retail, very much about market pull, because the online, the internet was already there. You could already buy things from companies online, but the enabling technology was coming up in the form of smartphones and being able to have home computers. So this enabled people to then shop from home, buying things from companies online. And that has been enormously lucrative for many companies. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, the technological push, if you like, comes from the development of new batteries. The pull is from people who are more concerned about the environment and realize we need to get away from oil burning cars. So we've got a combination of push and pull. But the changes in the regulations, the changes in the legislation forcing us to buy electric cars, I'd consider that a push. So you could say that's a legislative push rather than a technological push. Now, I've mentioned before that these new technologies create a revolution, yeah, and they make a whole new market, possibly. And I've contrasted that with the market pull, which is more evolutionary. You stick with the technology, but you refine it. Now, a view of technological development is that of paradigms that combines that push and that pull. And the idea is that we have a new technology, and then we center around that new technology and refine it and develop it over many, many years, probably. And then when the new push comes along, technological push, it involves a jump to a new paradigm. And the new paradigm is unrelated to the old paradigm. It's a whole new way of doing things. And because of that, the two paradigms can actually coexist. So the old paradigm is simply not as useful, and it starts to go, well, out of fashion, but it may not die completely. So the reason why I know about this is because my first degree is in psychology, and science is structured around these paradigms, or at least it is, according to the academic Thomas Kuhn, came up with the idea of paradigms. In business, it's not nearly so clear. So in psychology, we've got Sigmund Freud, and he has a very definite idea of the way the human mind works, and it's based on, you know, your ego and your id and concepts like that. And then there'll be other people like developmental psychologists, Jean Piaget, famous developmental psychologist, who talks about children developing in stages. And I think there are 4 stages. Now, his stage theory has nothing in common with Freud's theory. Freud's theory is a lot older. It's generally out of fashion, but it's still quite popular. And people kind of understand Freud very well, because Freud talks about, you know, pressure building up inside you, and you have to release that pressure, which has got nothing to do with Piaget's stage theory of development. Children don't develop because the pressure builds up and then they move on to the next stage. That's got nothing to do with it. That's like another language. Yeah. So it's all very clear in psychology whether you're a Freudian or whether you're a Piagetian. Yeah. Not so in business. Right. If we look at transport, originally we had horses. Yeah. So we want to make horses better. We breed them until we can develop a donkey into a racehorse, the ultimate kind of horse. When cars came along, cars have nothing in common with horses. You could never develop a horse into a car. Henry Ford did actually famously say that if he had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said a better, faster horse. They have no concept of the technology coming along, the technology of the car. You know, in 1850, the concept of the car was impossible to conceive. You couldn't have imagined a car. But once the car has come along, then you can imagine how it's going to get better. It's going to get more powerful, more luxurious. It's going to be faster. You know all of this. So here we have what I think is possibly the ultimate car, the Range Rover. Yeah. The car has not killed off the horse. So there are still uses for the horse, mainly leisure activities. Yeah. But horses are still around, just not in anything like the same numbers they were before. And a lot of what horses used to do, cars can do so much better, but not everything. Right, what about the paradigm of the future? Well, the thing about paradigms is that it's very difficult to see what the paradigm shift will be. You can't imagine the technology before it comes along. People will often claim that they have developed the new paradigm. And electric vehicles are said by many people to be a paradigm shift. It's going to change the way we use our cars. It's going to change the way we live. It's a whole new way of traveling. At the moment, that simply isn't true. At the moment, it looks like electric vehicles are really just a much better way of driving. They're a cleaner way of driving, but everything else is the same. You use the car for going on holiday, you use it for going shopping, for seeing your friends. You're not living another way. You buy a car so that you can carry on with your social and your business activities just like before. And it's actually, the Tesla is actually made in the same way. So that means that you've got big central factories making 500,000 cars a year for the public. If electric vehicles are to be a new paradigm, then it needs to change the way we live and work. And that could be that electric vehicles, they lend themselves to automation much more. So you would then use a car, instead of just traveling around, you would be able to get into your car and then start work. You could have online meetings in your car. It means you don't need an office. The car would be the office. So we've used the car for maybe traveling to meetings at other companies, meetings with other people, but you don't need to be going to your original office. Yeah. It also means you don't need to own the car. You get out of the car, someone else orders a car, and it's your car they take, but it's not your car. Next time you need a car, you go onto your smartphone, press in a few numbers, put in your PIN number, a car magically appears without a driver, you get in, it drives you off to wherever you want to go. So you don't need to own a car anymore. It means that you don't need nearly as many cars on the road. You can also make cars behave in ways that as you want them to behave. So they will all take a particular route. Rather than having to build new roads, you can get cars to drive much, much closer to each other because they're all communicating with each other. So you don't need nearly as much road space. Okay. And really, I want to start finishing off here. So in retail, paradigms in retail, or possible paradigms, and this will highlight how paradigms can be a little unclear in business. So originally, we would go to a small shop, a specialist shop, and they would serve you. So you would ask for something, you would go into a shop and you say, I want a pair of shoes, and they would find the shoes for you. So there would be a counter, you'd approach the counter, you'd explain what it is that you want, and then the person on the other side of the counter would go and find what it was, and they would do all the work. That then leads into a department store, which is doing the same thing, but it just has many, many more departments. So you can buy shoes there, clothes there, food, but it's done in the same way. You approach the counter, you say, I want a pair of socks, and they would go off and find you a pair of socks. Then I think in the 1930s, although I must admit this looks like the 1950s, this picture, you get the first supermarket, Piggly Wiggly, in the United States, where you serve yourself, and that's a different relationship. Those staff are now low-paid, low-skilled staff whose only job is to make sure the shelves are fully stacked, and you go around and you buy things in bulk now because you can take a trolley. Can't take a trolley around a traditional shop. Now you can take a trolley. And it might be that actually it's the trolley that you're pushing that's the paradigm shift, not the store. Yeah? The enabling technology for the supermarket is the trolley. And what's a big disaster for a department store is it's very difficult to take a trolley around a department store. So the capacity constraint for shopping in a department store are your own arms and how much you can carry. Whereas in a supermarket, the capacity constraint is in the trolley, and you get a lot more in a trolley. As a consequence, this little supermarket here, Piggly Wiggly, is developed into a massive supermarket like this, which will stock as many things as you can get into your trolley. Online retail might be a whole new paradigm. Well, I think it could well be a new paradigm. There's no capacity constraint anymore. You can buy as much as you want. Yeah? There's nothing stopping you except your own budget. It's a different shopping experience. It's not a social experience. Over here, even the supermarket is a reasonably social experience. You can go there with your friends. You can chat to them on the phone as you go around, whatever. But online, it's a different experience. So it might be that online retail cannot replace high street retail. Yes, it's a new paradigm, and it might be a popular paradigm. It might be the dominant paradigm, but people will still want to go to shops. Yeah, that paradigm will still exist. You might have a discussion about whether the paradigm, the historic paradigm and the current paradigm are two different paradigms. Maybe there's not much difference. Maybe if you can go around a department store with a trolley, then it's the same as a supermarket and there's no big difference. But I think you can probably say that the future paradigm, online retail, with the internet and the computer as the enabling technologies, and they define what online retail is, that really does represent a whole new paradigm. I think I'll leave it there. That's a final one. So, you know, the past paradigm in telecommunications, letter writing, it ultimately becomes email, because the only problem with letter writing is that it's slow. There's the delivery time. So email is the same thing, but with instant delivery, solves that problem. Yeah? And you know this right from the start. When telephones were invented, not the same as letter writing. It's an alternative paradigm. People don't stop writing letters just because the telephone has been invented. But you can see from this photograph, straight away, you know, it's the problem with the wires, isn't it? So what's the capacity constraint? What are the problems here with using the telephone? Well, you can't move around. You can't move around the house. You can't move around outside the house. Yeah, so you need something. You need to make it as mobile as you can. Different ways of doing that: wireless originally, or very long cables to begin with. Then you've got wireless phones, so you can move around the house, and then you've got a proper mobile phone where you can move around the world. Yeah, in the future paradigm, the smartphone, this is probably different to a mobile phone, because you can do so much on a smartphone. In fact, it's not really a phone anymore. A phone is a minor part of what it does. It's a telecommunications center. So what are the problems with this? It should be obvious, because that will tell you how it's going to be refined. The ultimate version of the smartphone. Probably we've reached it. Folding screens. You know, the problem with this is the screen, is the capacity constraint. So if you can fold the screen out and make it twice as big, great. And then you're there and you're finished. And that suggests that there will be no replacement for the iPhone. Well, there must be one day, but we've no idea what it actually is. We're pretty sure it's not the watch, because the watch has a screen that's too small, and we can see in the sales. Yeah. Okay, so some stuff there about paradigms and how different they can be. So in medicine, we use penicillin, antibiotics. In the old days, they used leeches, those little slug type things that suck blood. Two completely different paradigms, got nothing to do with each other. And actually, there is room to use leeches in modern medicine. Not in a way that penicillin, not in a way that antibiotics are used, but they do have their uses. I've got, you know, economic theories here. Again, you know, no common ground between them, really. Yeah. Okay. Was Kindle a new kind of paradigm? Well, if it was a failed paradigm, because it didn't really answer any of the problems about a book. A Kindle is about the size of a book, so it's, you know, it doesn't give you any. You don't gain anything there. You know, what's the capacity constraint with a book? I suppose the fact that you can only carry one book. Kindle allows you to carry a library, but you're only reading one book at a time. Yeah. Okay, so do have a look through that. Do have a look through the raising employability slide, which emphasizes this point that risk and uncertainty is something they calculate. Anyone can make that calculation. And that means that business is open to anyone, any age, gender, ethnicity, whatever.